Welcome, everybody, to Sherdog.com. This is Off the Chain, the weekly panel discussion show. So let's go ahead and introduce today's panel. Of course, I'm Ant Walker, your host, a Sherdog contributor, also a writer for MMA On Point. I am joined by a fantastic panel, as usual, joined by the senior editor of Sherdog.com, the jack of all trades who's mastered them all, Mr. Ben Duffy. Ben, what's going on, my man?
Good evening. It's we have an exciting bunch of stuff to talk about today. So, we had a great weekend behind us. We've got an interesting week ahead of us. So I'm just ready to dig in.
Got it. All right. And also want to introduce, because we're only going with three men today. So this guy would normally be introduced second, but he's still introduced second, but second is also last. Interesting. Jay Pettry, who is the resident Sherdog stat man. Jay, how are you feeling, my brother?
Great. I'm swimming in raw stats. I love it. So I'm looking forward to whatever's coming our way. We got a lot to talk about. We had some crazy stuff last week, and we have what 3-4 events this weekend coming up. So we got a lot coming our way. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, this is going to be a very packed show. So let's go right ahead and jump into all the madness. I just got back from Vegas, like literally seconds before pressing record. I walked in my front door from the airport. I was in attendance at UFC 239, so we have a lot to talk about there. And let's get into this main event. So what's next for the UFC's light heavyweight division? Since Jon Jones edged Thiago Santos by split decision, Ben, what's your take? What happens next with the light heavyweight division?
I see three possibilities. Possibility number one, if they want to run it back between Jon Jones and Thiago Santos, there's plenty of justification to do so. It was a close fight. And more than just close on the scorecards, because Jones has had a few close on the scorecards fights. This is one where he had moments where he appeared to be in actual peril. But you have the added element that both of them seem to be nursing leg injuries by the end of the fight. You heard Joe Rogan talking about, his knee. He was almost preparing to sell us a rematch in advance if it became necessary. If Jon Jones had lost that fight because he couldn't continue because of his leg, if Santos had taken the TKO due to leg injury in a fight that he was arguably winning, we'd probably be seeing an immediate rematch. And that was clearly... that's clearly what the booth was kind of preparing for. So, that would be a possibility. I wouldn't rather see it, but it would certainly not be the most implausible immediate rematch they've ever done. If Jones wants to keep stretching out his run at light heavyweight, I think Jan Blachowicz is the only logical next choice. When you look down the ranks, the guys in the top 10 at light heavyweight, he's either beaten them already, or they're people like Corey Anderson, Dominic Reyes, and Volkan Oezdemir, who just fought each other, that don't really seem close to ready. So, and Johnny Walker, he's made a big sensation. He's definitely not even close to ready. So even though Blachowicz lost to Santos, that's his only loss in his last 5 or 6 fights. Yeah. And all of a sudden, in hindsight, that actually looks a little better. Yeah, he got blown up by Santos, but you know what? Santos had the best fighter in the world on his heels a couple times. So that's possibility number 2. Possibility number 3 is that Jon Jones gives us what we want. He moves up to heavyweight, takes on either the winner of Cormier versus Miocic, or really anybody in the top 10 at heavyweight. I would love to see Jon Jones take him on. Pick one out of a hat. I want to see it. I want to see what he does if you put him in there with Alexander Volkov. Just let's see what happens. So if he does that, then there's no shortage of guys they could put together to fight for the vacant title or for an interim title. So that's light heavyweight.
Yeah. All right. So, Jay, before I have you directly answer that question, I want to get your scorecard on this. I, being in the arena and not hearing any bit of commentary, I haven't gone back to watch the fight to hear any of the commentary either. So from my perspective, I had Thiago Santos winning the first 2 rounds. I had Jon Jones winning the last 3. Of course, round 5 was one that was up for debate. A couple other rounds in there that could have been swing rounds as well. But Jay, how did you see this on the scorecard?
I had this one 48-47 for Jones. If I remember correctly, there were some rounds that you go, oh boy, I don't know if I feel comfortable about this. I don't think the judges either. They were all over the place. There were some rounds, round 4, Jones won, and then Santos won the other two, and then the same thing happened in round 5 when 2 judges gave it to Santos and 1 gave, or whatever, something like that. So the judges were just all over the place. I think I had it that, oh boy, I think I need to check my notes. I think I had it that Santos actually took the first round and surprised everybody. I think Jones took the momentum back. If he didn't win the second, he definitely won third, 4, 5. But I think I had it. I think I had it 2, 3, 4 for Jones. Yeah, I think so. It wasn't one of those Diaz Conde at 1, 2, 5 situations, but I think it was something like that. And there were some real toss-up rounds where you go, somebody won that round and nobody really threw a punch, and it was kind of, I don't know. It was a John Jones fight. It was clinical. It was effective. It was methodical, but it wasn't a destruction. It wasn't the thing. A lot of us have predicted, people have predicted Jones is going to take him down and use those elbows, and that's it. And that didn't happen. He tried to take him down once in the first round, and then
I don't remember him trying to take him down at all.
If he did, it was more like a clinch trip, no bail on it kind of thing. I don't remember anything that significant, and that I feel like that was just his best course to victory. But he kicked with a kicker. He punched. Well, he didn't really punch, but he struck with a striker and kind of won. I don't know. It was real close though. It wasn't close enough for an immediate rematch, I don't think, but it was close.
All right. That's one thing that I found very interesting about this fight, that the scorecards were all over the place, and you can make a justifiable case for just about everything that I've heard. I've heard deviations all across the map. And if memory is serving me correctly, I think the third round for Jones is the only one that was so clear cut that it was undeniable. Everything else just seemed like it could have gone either way, depending on what you were looking for. So Jay, I do want to ask you, what do you think is next for the light heavyweight division? Interestingly enough, the post-fight presser, Jones was also very, he of course entertained talk about heavyweight. Even said that him and Cormier were in agreement about the type of money that's going to be necessary to make this happen, and picked a target date for December. I mean, do you think that's where he goes, or do you think the light heavyweight division remains with the greatest fighter of all time?
I have been saying for a good while now that the way that the UFC wants it, this is the UFC dream situation, and I can kind of see it happening like this. DC beats Stipe in what is it? August? Yeah,
right.
Very, very in a month, and then DC turns around to defend that heavyweight title one last time against bitter rival John Jones. Goes out, tries to win a heavyweight, wins or loses. This is it, because if he lost, he's arguably lost. Well, he's lost 2, and then the no contest. But I think that's the way they want it the most. That's really what they're planning for. That's everything, because it'll give both the other divisions time to build up. They have their big mega fight, their big champion versus champion fight that they love having those. But will it happen? I don't know. Jones seems so nonplussed about moving on, other than Cormier and I can get after it anytime we want. And then Cormier says at the press conference, we could fight in the backstage or something. Well, obviously not. But the point is the interest will always be there. But will it? Cormier is 40 and counting. And, Jones, I mean, he's the kind of guy, I think we said this last week, he might be the kind of guy to wait until Cormier retires to go up to heavyweight. So I can see him staying in light heavyweight and kind of picking through to some contenders that you go, but you understand. It kind of makes sense. Dom Reyes, as we mentioned, he's 11-0. He's 5-0 in the UFC. He's finished 3 guys, and he's got a couple top 10 wins. I mean, the fight against Volkan was really close. You could even argue that he lost that fight. And OSP, he took him to a close fight too. I think he beat him anyway. He beat him. I thought he beat OSP by decision as well. Yes. And so he's a possible contender that you go, maybe, but at the same time, it wouldn't move the needle. Corey Anderson is the kind of guy that you look at and go, well, maybe he's due. He's won 3 in a row. It's his longest win streak in a while. He beat Latifi, Glover, and Pat Cummins. Okay, fine. He's top 15 at the time. So it's maybe about time. Blachowicz, I don't know if it's time yet, but he's about a win away. Alexander Rakic is 1 win away probably. No Johnny Walker. No, thank you. No Chris Weidman with a win, jumps the line and gets the shot. No, thanks. Yeah, I mean, as a fight fan, Jones, Cormier 3 at heavyweight. If not, and they throw in heavyweight, I don't know. There's the Volkov fight is one I hadn't thought of, so I'm really glad that Duffy brought that up. But I was thinking just in terms of welcome to the heavyweight division, but not really it being named, but not a test truly, is Stefan Struve. It'll be the first guy he does not have a reach advantage over, I think, ever. Because I think they both have 84 and a half inch reaches, but that's not, that's just silly.
Yeah, that's only in the video game
Right.
at this point. But one thing I did want to touch on that you brought up that you said, oh, he didn't quite punch. That's kind of how I remember it too. I don't remember Jones throwing, but maybe a few punches in there, and it made an interesting bit of conversation with myself and a few other media members after the fight. I am of the belief that Jones is having these little games to entertain himself. For him to go out there and fight this Muay Thai expert and say, you know what, I'm going to try to do this with only kicks just because I can. Like when the Anthony Smith fight, like, let's see if I can just box him the entire time.
Yeah, right.
Just because, I think Jones is so good that he is deciding to add extra challenges on himself and say, hey, maybe I won't just throw him down and do what I do. I'm just going to play around and enjoy myself in the process. So that's just my little takeaway on that. But before we talk about the co-main event with Amanda Nunes defeating Holly Holm, in the topic of light heavyweight contenders, one name that is going to be absent from that list that we all were anticipating to be a new entry to that division is Luke Rockhold, who suffered a brutal knockout loss to Jan Blachowicz. So he finally made this long-awaited trip to the light heavyweight division, and he gets KO'd for his efforts. What do you take away from this, Jay?
Well, this isn't the kind of situation where a fighter should watch this and go, boy, this is why I don't move. This is why I don't go up and weight, because, everybody hits harder. I might not be able to handle it as much. I don't think people should take get that kind of takeaway. I think fighters should take this and think he's a top flight guy. He's a former champion, top 5, I don't know. I think he's in the top 10. I know he's in the top 10 at least, if not top 5 in middleweight before he moved up. If he realizes the weight cut's too hard and he's had all the success of the division, well, maybe it's not a bad idea. Maybe despite being a dominant middleweight for most of the time until Yoel Romero, beat him up. I think this is the kind of thing the fighter should go, okay, maybe I can feel more comfortable. If Rockhold can do it, and even though he got knocked out and realizes, okay, it's time, then we should do it. But at the same time, for Rockhold himself, this is one of those sit down Brendan Schaub and go, hey pal, look, I know we've had a good run, but all 5 of his losses are by knockout, and 4 of them are just mean-spirited knockouts, KO knockouts. In Fight Finder, we have TKO for technical knockout and KO for knockout. It usually, how the blows are delivered and what the intervention needs. 4 of his 5 are KOs. They're the kind you go, ooh, they got that GIF reaction. I mean, when Dana says, hey man, look, we love you, buddy, but maybe it's time to hang it up. Maybe it's not the worst idea. But he hasn't fought much in the past several years. He's fought once a year, dating back to 2016, once a year, and he's not fighting again this year. He's got a broken jaw, and he's on the sidelines for a long time. Is it time for 34-year-old Luke Rockhold to hang it up? Maybe.
He's over 34.
Yeah,
I think it's 34. I think he's just 34.
Well, he's only 34. I thought it was like 36, but I could be wrong.
Right this second.
Yeah.
34, 1984.
Well, how dare we argue numbers with the stat guy, Ben?
Seriously.
Yeah, we're fools for that. Sorry, Jay. Continue, my man.
No, it's a good question though. That in itself is a really good question. Whoa, he's only 34. That, I mean, you think of other guys. Think of Shogun. How old's he? Not as old as we think he is. How old is Jose Aldo? I mean, he's my age. He's not a senior. He's not a senior division entrant anytime soon. Mm-hmm. He's still got a lot more mileage to go. I mean, Aldo just signed an 8-fight deal. If the UFC were smart, they do this. Give him, like they've been doing to old champions like Anderson Silva, and a couple of old names. Give them the 8-fight contract, which basically, I know you're not going to fight 8 times, but we're going to give you a good amount of money, and you're going to have to stick with us, and you'll be able to bail on us and go to ONE or to Bellator or some other senior circuit league. So they probably would, it would behoove them to hold on to him and say, hey, you want to fight a couple more times, go ahead, but we're not going to let you give other promotions a name off of the championship you won for us. Now, is that smart for fight fans? No, we want him to go over and fight Vitor Belfort in ONE when Vitor Belfort's TRT tour again. I want to see if he's going to get that back, but I don't know. It's not that wise. If he keeps getting knocked out like this, call it quits, man. It's not good for your brain.
All right, Ben. So let me know if you agree with me on this one. And I, for the one of the rare times in life, I agree with Dana White on this one. I think it's time for Luke Rockhold to hang it up. He's not in the position of most other fighters. This man has a very lucrative modeling career, lucrative enough for him to turn down this fight being a main event very soon. So I'm of the mind that, hey, if you can get money by just looking good and taking a picture, do that as opposed to jumping in a cage and getting hit upside the head. Yeah. What do you think about that, Ben?
I completely agree. Anytime a fighter can parlay their fight fame into revenue streams that do not involve them getting punched in the face, or can continue to be revenue streams after they're no longer getting punched in the face, until this sport pays better, I mean, I cannot in good conscience discourage them from doing that. Whether it is Gina Carano, 8 years ago, or it's Luke Rockhold right now. So if Luke can stop getting knocked out like he is and continue making that paper, by all means do so. Because like Jay said, it's not just that he's had TKO losses. In 3 of his last 4 fights, he's been knocked out cold. Yeah. Paraphrase or to quote one of his opponents during that run, do you know where you are? Level knockouts. Yeah. Which, I mean, it's funny, but at the same time, it's alarming.
Yeah.
Bisping, Romero, and now Blachowicz have all knocked him to the point that he was completely separated from his wits. Yeah. Like smelling salts knockouts.
Right. And I was in the building for the 199 knockout as a fan at the Forum. And he was donezo for sure. But this one was much worse, much worse. Also had a brief word with John Morgan of MMA Junkie, like right after that fight, and he was like, "Man, did you notice a couple of those shots that glanced him seemed to do him a little more harm?"
Yeah,
it's like, yeah, this is kind of alarming. And you understand when a guy like a gentleman that we will be talking about, Diego Sanchez, continues fighting because they don't really do anything else. They don't really have anything else going on. But Rockhold has something going on. So you just got to wonder at what point is it no longer worth it? So definitely something to watch for in the near future, what happens with Luke Rockhold. But let's go ahead and talk about Amanda Nunes, who defended her title against Holly Holm in highlight reel fashion. So buy or sell, Ben, there's no female fighter on the UFC roster that is able to beat Amanda Nunes.
Am I allowed to say bastard on this show?
Of course.
Jay is a devious bastard for phrasing this question the way he did, because there are several female fighters on the UFC roster that can beat Amanda Nunes. There are none that I would favor to beat her. Like, if she ends up getting a second match with Chris Cyborg can beat her. Nunes will be favored, and rightly so, but Cyborg absolutely has plausible avenues to victory. There are a couple of other fighters who are like that. So yes, there are female fighters in the UFC that can beat Amanda Nunes. There are none that would be even remotely favored to do so right now.
All right, Jay. So the bastard who phrased this question, what do you say?
I say I buy it for now. I right at this moment, if we were to take Amanda Nunes and schedule her for Madison Square Garden, okay, in November, so she has 4 months to recover and get training camp going on, to defend her belt at featherweight or at bantamweight against any female fighter on the roster, I think I'd favor her to beat every single one of them. I would favor her to beat and not beat. I'd favor her to finish almost everybody. Just her run is just ludicrous. It's the kind of thing that you don't expect to see very often. And this isn't a slight on genders, but statistically speaking, female fighters have a much lower knockout rate. Amanda Nunes has knocked out 7 women in her UFC run, more than any other fighter by a decent margin. She has the other records. You want the records. She and Jessica Andrade, the strawweight champion, are tied with the most wins for a female fighter. She has the longest win streak. She has the most finishes. She has the most first round stoppages. She's finished 8 women in the first round in her run, including, I don't know, names like Miesha Tate, Ronda Rousey, Chris Cyborg, Holly Holm in the first round. And then you look at the other people. We talked about this last week. She knocked out Julia Budd. She knocked out Jermaine Durandamy. She's beaten Shevchenko twice, even though Ogier thought that Shevchenko won the second fight. She has 2 declared wins over flyweight champion Valentina Shevchenko, and I would favor Nunes to win if they, for some reason, ever rematched. The last woman to beat her was Kat Zingano 5 years ago. If they fought again, it would not result the same way. If I haven't rewatched the fight in its entirety,
neither of the women in that fight exist in 2019.
No, it's absolutely right. I remember she ran out of gas, and that was the end of the game. But it wouldn't get to the third round. Kat Zingano was, good fighter. That was kind of bad luck with the Megan Anderson situation, but she's 1-4 in her last 5. She's not getting a title shot anytime soon. But you know what the scariest thing about Amanda Nunes is? She's 31. She's 31 years old. She's in her prime now. She has who knows how many more years left in the sport. It depends on what she wants to do going forward. She has a couple of potential opponents, but right now, this is the perfect time for her to go back up to featherweight and defend that belt against Cyborg Spencer Winner, to let bantamweight figure out who's next. Because I looked at the rankings, just nobody that you could put up there would have an effect. Make people want to watch it. They just
the
what are they
winner
going to do?
Of GDR and Aspen Ladd is the next one that's kind of being talked about. But I do agree with you on that one. It's going to be tough to sell that. I also believe that Amanda Nunes going back up to featherweight to defend that belt next is the best thing she can do from a legacy perspective. She was the first person to become a double champion and defend the belt in the lower weight class. Conor McGregor, Daniel Cormier, and they and Henry Cejudo has yet to do this as well. The first 2 gentlemen just vacated those belts beforehand. So I want to see her be able to round out this legacy of greatness. I'm pretty convinced that Amanda Nunes is the greatest female fighter of all time, and I'm quite frankly not willing to accept any other answers at this point. So buy or sell whether or not anyone can beat her on the roster. I think a rematch with Cyborg might go differently if the strategy on Cyborg's end were changed. I imagine it will. But still, if that strategy does change, if she comes out fighting smarter, she may not still win. One thing that I think is scarier than Amanda Nunes' age is that she's getting better with every fight now. Right, there are noticeable technical differences in what she does. Do you remember those days like the Kat Zingano fight where she was just a berserker rage to just charge out and swing? And a lot of times people fell, but sometimes they didn't. She'd get tired. That person doesn't exist anymore. That person that we see now is at least conserving their energy enough to have a still a very ridiculous power output as the rounds progress. And that changes the game quite a lot when you look at the original blueprint of beating Amanda Nunes. So I'm very excited to see what's next for her as well. All right. So
hold on. I got a quick question. This is something I came up with. I couldn't figure this out. Holly Holm landed 11 significant strikes in that fight. Do you remember any of them? Do you remember any significant strike that was? The definition of a significant strike is a strike that is at distance that isn't a jab. So any other thing like that?
The oblique kicks. That's kind of it. That's the only thing that really that I really remember.
Yeah.
I remember her blocking. I want to say she blocked a head kick at some point. That's really kind of it. Yeah.
That paints the picture, is that head kick Holly got head kicked. I don't want to go so far as to say It's the female equivalent of a Gonzaga Crow Cop. But the parallels are there.
Right. It's definitely something worth mentioning. So let's move on to another part of UFC 239, the opener for the main card. Diego Sanchez took on Michael Chiesa, and he definitely made some headlines in the build up to this fight. Of course, the interview with Ariel Helwani at Media Day got a lot of press, but he did say the same things to myself and to a few others in a scrum at the LA Media Day about him leaving Jackson Winklejohn feeling like he wasn't getting enough personalized attention. So he turned to just one guy, a guy named Josh Fabia, who had never trained an MMA fighter before. In fact, has no credentials in mixed martial arts. I looked up his website, the School of Self-Awareness, which interesting, right up the alley of Diego Sanchez as far as his metaphysical speak. So Ben, what do you think about Diego Sanchez, his performance Saturday night, his corner situation, just his career in general at this point?
It was exceedingly bizarre, even by the lofty normal standards of Diego Sanchez. I mean, I'm not one of the ones rushing to scream CTE about this for the simple fact that Diego Sanchez has been an extremely odd and idiosyncratic individual for as long as we've known him. As far back as the Tough House, he was a weird cat. 10 years ago, he was doing cartwheels and showing us his apartment that had no TV set, but just had a mirror on the wall where like his TV was supposed to be. Like he's been a weird dude, but I mean, in an unaffected way, just a legitimate kind of free spirit and kind of a seeker and wanderer type guy for as long as we've known him. So that was all ratcheted up a bit this week. But I'm not ready to say, oh, his brain is broken, at least not broken in any way that it hasn't been for a long time. His corner man, I mean, that was the worst cornering that I have ever seen in modern high-level mixed martial arts.
Head movement.
I see. No.
And Edmund Terverdian was cornering a fighter on this card too, so that just shows you the level of bad.
Luckily, Shabazian didn't need any head movement.
Right.
I take back every time I've ever complained about multiple cornermen like yelling at a fighter at the same time, because it was so lonely and desolate to just have one unqualified asshole like saying random shit to Diego. It was so strange. And Diego performed very well in spite of that.
Right.
I mean, very well for, where Diego's at right now. In spite of that.
Yeah. So Jay, if you could very, very quickly get your Tyson on and tell me what exactly went wrong with Diego Sanchez, just this entire buildup, if you can break that down for me from your side of things.
I mean, I don't know if I can point to one thing either. I think Duffy hit the nail on the head. I do. I think that you can't just go, well, that's it. It's brain trauma that's clearly causing it. I mean, we know Diego. We've known Diego for a long time. A lot of fight fans grew up as he was one of the first real personalities they watched. I mean, the Tough One introduced a lot of people to the sport, and Diego and all the Diegoing he did, it was kind of part and parcel. So it didn't. I mean, it kind of has gradually escalated. I mean, there's spiritualism and there's a whole bunch of other things. Walking out with a giant cross, shouting at the arena as if he was cursing or cleansing or whatever he was doing. Diego's Diego, so he's always that.
An old fighter, a young fighter. Like, how does the exorcism go?
But at the same time, you do have to look at the numbers. He broke the 6-hour mark. It's a very rare thing for a UFC fighter to spend more than 6 hours in a cage. In the UFC, in the octagon. I mean, Edgar, Maia, Jeremy Stevens, and Rafael Dos Anjos are the only other guys to ever spend that long in a cage. And when you're in the cage for that long, you're going to get hit in the head. And the numbers don't lie. The only person who's been hit in the head more than Diego is BJ Penn. And we had a talk about BJ Penn and what's happening to him recently as well. Now, is it one and the same? Not necessarily, but it's concerning. Now, about the snake oil salesman in his corner, if there had been a legitimate corner, if Greg Jackson had been there, reassuring him, giving him a hug, patting him on the head, whatever he needed to do to reach Diego, and then they had a couple other guys cornering along the way. I don't know, not Brandon Gibson, but you know what I mean, other guys that can help out. Would that have made a big difference? I don't know. Chiesa was bigger, stronger, and kind of toss him around, but it would have helped. You have to think.
Yeah, I don't think that the outcome would have been very different, but when a guy who is clearly bigger, stronger, a better grappler than you, and they're out positioning you and they're dominating you in a lot of ways, if the lone person in your corner cannot offer you any technical advice other than crack the coconut or whatever he was talking about, it's just really not going to help anything. So in my brief research into this Josh Fabia guy, his website shows a lot of training videos where he's teaching, I guess, like military people some sort of mumbo jumbo that doesn't look like it actually works. It looks like he honestly seems like somebody who's better suited to choreograph a movie than to coach an MMA fight. A lot of stuff. You ever see those demos where it has to be a partner that's not resisting, and you're just hitting the guy 30 times and gradually break him down. It looks a lot like that, only sillier. So I really don't know where Sanchez survived that fight on his sheer willpower and the stuff he already knew. There's nothing that a guy like that can teach him. That's the level up from Steven Seagal teaching Anderson Silva the white belt basic front kick to the face. So just wanted to get that 2 cents out. So, all right, gentlemen, we're going to put a bow on UFC 239. So the shock and awe, I want you, Jay, to tell me the moment that surprised you the most, pre-fight coverage, post-fight coverage, the fights themselves, anything related to 239. What's your shock and awe moment?
Are we saying no Masvidal?
I wouldn't. I don't think I would anyway. I mean,
okay.
I predicted that to happen, except for I thought it'd be Masvidal would knock him out later. But I'm not a Nostra whatever. I'm just kind of paying attention. Anyway, I think the biggest surprise, if I'm going to go straight off and go fight results because that's better, it's my wheelhouse, I'm going to go with an early prelim that happened that not a lot of people saw. It was on Fight Pass. It was on ESPN Plus. I don't even know where you could watch it. The UFC needs to get their act together on broadcasting early fights. So Chance Rencounter, a kind of a savvy kickboxer with a good submission game, just completely handled Austrian kickboxer Ismail Nardiev. And that was huge to me because Nardiev made his UFC debut, I'm pretty sure it was on short notice, and dominated Michel Prazeres, who was on an 8-fight win streak, and he was one of the under-heralded 170ers, and he handled him like it was nothing. Grappling, no big deal, get off me. He got taken down a couple times, reversed it on him. He just looked great. Rencounter had a sort of a similar strategy, uses grappling, get it done, land a couple takedowns and everything, and it just handled him. He didn't land a lot in the way of significant strikes in the whole fight. I mean, again, significant strike totals don't tell the whole picture, but he landed 4 significant strikes in the whole fight. He landed some other ones, short ground and pound and stuff like that along the way, but and also in one of the rounds he did not land a single significant strike, just some ground and pound, like 20 ground and pound, and won a 10-8 on one of the judges' scorecards and 2 of our Sherdog.com scorers. So he used grappling in a way that nobody expected and did so against a guy that was, a huge favorite. This fight, it doesn't seem like a big deal, is the biggest betting upset of 2019 for UFC. Nordiev was a -7 or 570 to Rencounter's comeback at 435. So that was a huge upset that no one really noticed. Yeah, I did.
All right. So, Ben, what's your shock and awe moment of UFC 239? Of course, excluding Masvidal's ridiculous knockout, which we definitely will talk about later.
And everything that came after. I mean, I'm not going to be quite as esoteric as Jay. I'm still stuck on the main event. The thing about Jon Jones is when you have a fighter like Jones who's never really lost a fight in the cage, there's a bit of the Mayweather effect where there's hype and buzz around them, but the actual product in the ring or cage is not always that exciting. With someone like Jones, who's again never lost, the only way you have to drum up interest is one, if they establish a pattern of doing spectacular things to their opponents, like finishing them in exotic or spectacular fashion, or if you could at least sell the audience the narrative that, this guy has a legitimate chance to catch and maybe hurt and maybe even upset the unbeatable fighter. The UFC knows it. The UFC tried to sell us, that Dan Hardy only had to touch George St. Pierre's chin once. So they understand it. And for the first time in a long time of watching Jon Jones, at the end of round 1 of that fight, I was more interested than I was at the beginning of round 1. Mm-hmm. Jones fights tend to follow kind of a predictable pattern. He spends the first round and a half getting his bearings, and then he starts rolling downhill harder and harder until either the final bell rings or his opponent breaks. And even when he finishes them, it's not usually pyrotechnics. It's just something brutal and clinical, and you knew it was coming sooner or later. This fight had an element of unpredictability. There was no point at the fight where you could have paused it, and I would have bet even money that Santos was going to win. But there was a level of intrigue there that had not been there at least since the first Gustafsson fight, if not longer. So, that's my takeaway from it. I very much had Santos pigeonholed as he's just another guy to go on Jones's resume. Jones is in the mode. He's in legacy mode where he's just going to fight the most deserving guy that the UFC can drum up from here until he decides either to retire, move to heavyweight, or X number of years down the road he starts to decline. And I found myself surprised and my expectations overturned, and that was a really exciting feeling. I was watching this event in a bar. First time I've watched a pay-per-view in a bar in almost 4 years. So I was not scoring the rounds, to say the least. So I have no take on whether it was a robbery or a good decision or not, but I definitely enjoyed it more than I've enjoyed any Jon Jones fight in many years.
All right. So my shock and awe moment, it's not something that should surprise us on the surface of it. I did witness, at least partially, this little kerfuffle between Khabib Nurmagomedov and Nate Diaz. But the shocking part about this is that the UFC would even allow them anywhere near each other. There were some people talking about that there was, maybe this was a contrived thing to drum up some interest. But realistically, Khabib headlining a major pay-per-view in Abu Dhabi, a market that they're really trying to foster and really develop and, get some fresh eyeballs on the product, along with Nate Diaz, who's a major part of the selling point for UFC 241 coming up in August. Somebody probably lost their job for letting those guys sit anywhere near each other. So to that poor UFC former UFC staffer, I hope the job search is going well. Indeed.com. All right. So we're going to move on just a little bit here, and we'll come back to that ridiculous knockout. But John Lineker made news over the week because he was released by the UFC. This was only less than 2 weeks after pulling out of the co-main event for UFC Greenville in South Carolina. So now we got the news that he is signed to ONE Championship. So, Jay, please tell me, do you agree or disagree with the UFC cutting him? And what do you make about him going to ONE Championship now?
This is for the millions of people watching this broadcast around the world. You might not like this. I actually agree with what the UFC did. And why? It's because I looked into it. I just didn't go, he's an exciting banger. He puts on Fight of the Night. He's got the craziest fight with Francisco Rivera and all the things along the way. I looked at his performance. I looked at the professionalism and the way he's handled himself as a UFC fighter, that eventually, even an exciting fighter, they have to draw the line. Now, it's unfortunate for fans that they did with him, but I understand. And here's why. He's missed weight 5 times in his UFC tenure. more than any other, more than Rumble Johnson, more than Kelvin Gastelum and other names we joke about that would miss weight all the time. He's missed weight more than any of them. He missed 4 times at flyweight, and the UFC finally said, "Stop it, get up to bantamweight," and he missed weight again at bantamweight. So that was kind of a big sting against him, and he's been pulling out of fights at a rate that isn't out of line with other fighters, but it's when he does it. He pulled out of UFC Greenville the day before weigh-ins. So there was nothing they could do, no replacement, no backup, because he cut his eye on cutting weight or something like that. He pulled out of the first ESPN Plus card 9 days before the fight. He pulled out of UFC 219 on fight week. He pulled out of Fight Night 83 against, I think it was against Cruz in 2016 on fight week. So when he leaves him like that, the UFC has to just stop and go, come on. We're okay with you being injured. We're okay with this happening. But if you know this is happening, don't just spring it on us the week it happens, because there's nothing we can do. All the fights that happened, except for one of them, because I think they had 9 days to do it, they replaced him with, I think it was Augusto Mendez. But the point is, he leaves him in such a bad spot. He's such a name. There's nothing they can do. And he did it again, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back for me and for them. But on the upside, as long as he's with one championship, we'll never have to worry about him missing weight ever again.
Exactly, because they will say he made weight, so we have to accept their word. Ben, please tell me, do you agree with the UFC letting John Lineker go?
Well, I'm not. See, the problem is you let Jay go first, and he just brought this impenetrable wall of facts, that like crushes all my hot takes into oblivion.
Hot take all you want, buddy. Don't worry about it.
I mean, nonetheless, notwithstanding his record, it felt like a vindictive move. But yes, in light of his history, maybe a justified level of frustration with the guy. There is no doubt that he has been ultra unprofessional when it comes to the scale. It's a big warning sign when somebody misses weight in multiple weight classes. If you miss weight repeatedly in one weight class, it just means perhaps you weren't realistic about your target weight. If you miss weight in multiple weight classes, it starts to speak to your professionalism, undisputably. And he is one of the few guys who has done that. I'm glad that Anthony Rumble Johnson has finally embraced the fact that he is a 280-pound man. And I completely agree. He's best off in one championship. One championship is really good at 2 things: pushing highlight reel finishes and using those as like its own ever renewing marketing engine. They're great at pushing their own highlight videos and GIFs, and so they're good at that, and they're good at not giving a damn what you weigh. So this is a perfect fit. He's an exciting fighter. He's a weird little dude with an interesting personality. I look forward to seeing what he does in one championship, and we will probably see him fight Demetrius Johnson sometime in the next 12 months, and you will know that he weighs 158 pounds when he walks in there.
The good news is that we just might see him fight Demetrius Johnson after all. That was a fight that, man, I really, really wanted to see at flyweight, but looks like we will get it in some way, shape, or form. Of course, it definitely won't be at any sort of variation of flyweight. It's going to be at whatever weight Lineker walks in at. All right, so let's move on from that. This week is the return of PFL. And, of course, the big deal about PFL right now is Kayla Harrison. That's their star. And if she were to be in the finals along with the other favorite in the women's lightweight division, Sarah Kaufman, Jay, who wins that?
I've been wondering this ever since they made the tournament, because it's pretty obvious that that's what they're wanting to happen. They have a bunch of fighters who, absolutely no disrespect to any of the fighters, but when you're 1-1, when you're 3-5, when you're whatever, you're probably not brought into the tournament to excel. You're brought into the tournament to be a springboard and say, well, yeah, sure, she was this record, but it's in the tournament, so anything goes. It's that kind of mentality. Kayla Harrison's 4-0, 3 finishes. She's done what she needs to do. But Sarah Kaufman is way different of a kind of opponent than she ever has and I don't think will face up until she fights her. There's just nobody that will give her that kind of look. I mean, you look at who Kaufman's lost to in the past. Marloes Coenen, Ronda Rousey, Alexis Davis all tapped her armbar. Yeah, of course they did, because Ronda did. And she barely lost a fight to Shevchenko that I think at the time, years ago, I think I said she won, but that doesn't matter. Her level of competition has been way better, and she rises to the occasion almost all the time. I think this is one of those situations where she surprises everybody and when Kayla Harrison tries to take her down, throw her or whatever, Kaufman's wise to it and says, "Not so fast, young lady." I can see Kaufman winning that.
All right, Ben, do you agree with Jay?
I agree with Jay.
Oh.
If they were fighting this weekend, give me Kaufman. I think Kayla Harrison is still improving.
Yes.
But right now, what is Kayla Harrison? She is a world-class athlete, you know, an incredibly strong, athletic, powerful woman with an unimpeachable background in judo. She is still not a good striker. Like, she's not shown like very smooth striking. You know, the success she's had is attributable at least as much to her opponents either being not very good or terrified of her, or a mixture of both. I'm not going to say she's Ronda Rousey, because I'm not sure Ronda ever gave more than lip service to trying to improve her striking game, but it would not be unfair to say that she's Brock Lesnar right now. Like, Brock legitimately worked at becoming a better striker. It never completely took, but he gave it an effort. You know, I don't know what her ceiling will be, but right now, if she fought Sarah Kaufman, Sarah's a very strong woman. She's at least good in all the phases of MMA.
Yes.
I don't think she'd be completely ragdolled and dummied. And if Kayla couldn't, you know, get her hands on her and do the, you know, the Osotogari, or, you know, or you know, whichever throw, she could be in some trouble. Like, Sarah's a good enough boxer, good enough kickboxer that she could mark her up. I mean, she might even be able to stay away from her and rack up some points. So yeah, if they're fighting this weekend, you know, I would cautiously take Sarah Kaufman. By the end of this year, who knows?
I'm going to have to disagree with both of you. I would pick Kayla Harrison in that, and simply as a matter of size. Sarah Kaufman is not a natural lightweight. Yeah, at all. So in order for her to fight in that division, she's not at her optimal shape. You know, she has to put on unnecessary pounds to be to be in the lightweight division. And Kayla Harrison is a pretty sizable, strong person, even for 155 in the women's division. So I think the size alone, along with the improving athletic skills, improving fight skills, I think Kayla Harrison would get that done. Of course, you know, it's hard to just disregard a veteran, and Sarah Kaufman is the pinnacle of veteran. You know, the sort of fighter that should be able to beat Kayla Harrison when you just look at the skill sets. But when your optimal best is at bantamweight and you're fighting at lightweight, it's got to take a toll on you somehow. So I think Kayla Harrison would get that done. All right, gentlemen. So let's very briefly discuss this one, because probably don't want to give these guys any more shine than is necessary. But Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship apparently has a little discrepancy about the pay-per-view buys on the Artem Lobov and Paulie Malignaggi main event. So Dave Feldman, their president, has estimated about 200,000 buys. He's saying that they've exceeded 200,000 buys. That's definitely a number I saw reported by some legit outlets, at least quoting him. Dave Meltzer, who is the man who sets the standard of finding out these pay-per-view numbers, he actually claims that less than 10% of that number, 18,000 plus, and digital numbers as well. So, gentlemen, what do you make of this? I'll start with you, Ben.
I mean,
good answer.
On the one hand, I'm not mad at Feldman. You know, it is a fight. It is a fight promoter's job to be a carnival barker. to hawk whatever wares they have. Lying is part of that job. I mean, there's a continuum between kind of exaggerating and padding your numbers and just telling a flat out lie. I mean, exaggerating the numbers tenfold is pretty excessive, but I'm not even mad at him for that. And he has shown that he's a buffoon. I'm looking at it more as if credible mainstream traditional boxers were not already flocking away from bare knuckle, like it was a hornet's nest, they are now. Because they're already going, okay, a pretty good belt holder who was not absurdly out of his prime, got beat up by a mediocre MMA fighter and the fight was terrible. Now they're looking at it like, oh, and nobody watched. So it's a lose-lose. I think this will be the beginning of the end of bare knuckle boxing as any kind of phenomenon that we feel compelled to discuss as people covering mixed martial arts. I think it's on its way out at this point. That's the biggest blow.
So, Jay, do you think the Alexander Emelianenko versus Rumble Johnson fight that was falsely reported, do you think that saves the company?
For about a quarter of a second, I read that over report, looking into it. I thought, okay, Dave Feldman, bare knuckles, and I thought, could that be real? And then after taking a second and shaking my head, I went, no, that's just ridiculous parody stuff. I will always believe Dave Meltzer or a media figure over a promoter. Just it's how it has to go. It isn't at the fault of any promoter. It isn't to slight any one over the other. But when you make a claim, and in the same claim you say that our show did about 200,000 Google searches. Okay, cool. That's good. You can find Google search trending numbers. We can find those numbers. And then right after say you also can claim 200,000 buys. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. I'm no doctor, but it doesn't work like that. The absolute best case scenario that if they doubled their numbers, say that they had half the people buy it on TV and it was 18,000, and then the other half bought on Fight TV or one of those other streaming services and doubled that, so it's 36,000. They don't even clear $1.5 million, and that doesn't count the cut to providers, cable people, whomever, the broadcasts at Fight TV, whatever else they need to pay along the way, and overhead and salary. And oh, that's right, Paulie Malignaggi was rumored to make 7 figures. If you look at the arena and say that, okay, they're in Tampa, about 5,000 people in that little entertainment hall in the fairgrounds. If you average, which is an overestimation, that the ticket price was $50 a pop, that's another 250 grand in ticket sales. And this is the best case scenario. They don't clear $2 million for an event that cost them probably over $2 million. This is their biggest card. This was the one. This was the one that's going to break them out and do it, and it didn't. And this is just, I mean, it's not over. But then you look at next month, whenever the next one is, with Leonard Garcia and Jason Knight, and you think, boy, if Paulie and the drama of the Conor and the Conor's buddy thing did that few, how do you think Leonard Garcia, Jason Knight's going to do?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's worth noting that Dana White will argue with Meltzer's number sometimes.
Sure.
But he's saying, no, it didn't do 350,000, it did almost 500,000. He's never arguing that Meltzer was off by a factor of 10. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'm firmly in Meltzer's camp on this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely would trust his word over the words of Dave Feldman. All right, so gentlemen, very, very quickly, give me some hot takes. I know, Ben, you are stopping yourself from giving a hot take, but now's your moment, man. Hot take us away, man. Fire it up.
No, I don't have anything all that hot. Like I mentioned before, I did a weird thing. I didn't have any site-related duties that required me to be right on top of things. I wasn't doing any play-by-play or scoring or anything. So I went in and took in UFC 239 in a bar, and I had not seen a UFC pay-per-view in a bar since, I don't think, 2015. The last time I saw a pay-per-view in a bar, Conor McGregor and Ronda Rousey were still active fighters. Everybody was mad about the new Reebok deal, and nobody thought the Fertittas would ever sell the UFC. I mean, that's how long it's been.
Mm-hmm.
So I went in there, and I specifically chose a redneck-ass bar. I did not go to a Buffalo Wild Wings or a Hooters. I went to a place that's actually in between incorporated areas here in the Houston area, to the point that like smoking was legal there. Like I smelled like smoke when I left. It was disgusting. Anyway, I was surprised and heartened by the crowd response to the Amanda Nunes Holly Holm fight. Because in this bar that had like been loud and been rowdy and been chanting USA at various points of the evening, she got she being Amanda Nunes got an enormous pop. Like during her walkout and when she was introduced, that place went nuts for her.
Really?
And I mean, because again, I had not really partaken of MMA with casual fans in the live setting in quite some time. I was buying into the narrative that she's this unmarketable champion. It doesn't help that, with the possible exception of Tyron Woodley, she is the champion most virulently disrespected by her own boss. And just to see this, room full of people going crazy for like the, Brazilian lesbian champion, fighting the All-American blonde girl, I found it an enormously heartening thing. It was exactly the kind of thing I needed to see this week. So it restored my faith, perhaps not in humanity, not in America, and certainly not in mixed martial arts, but reminded me that at the heart of it all, most of us just want to see great fighters in great fights.
All right, Jay, what's your hot take?
So, just for a real quick background, the show Game of Thrones, if you haven't watched it, it's okay. I won't give any spoilers away. This isn't a big thing. There's a couple of characters. There's one character called the Hound who takes a young girl named Arya, and he's basically taking her to somewhere to deliver her so that he can collect a reward for bringing her back. Just long story short. So when they finally, after a very long journey, reach the gates, the gatekeeper tells them that the person that the Hound is trying to deliver her to is dead. The girl, with just out of nowhere, laughs just uproariously, just a 10-second laugh, which in television is a very long time. Now, with all due respect to Ben Askren in his fighting career, when he got knocked out in 5 seconds, I laughed. And it wasn't because I didn't like him or dismissive or hostile towards it, but the pure absurdity of what just happened made me laugh. Just the trash talk and everything leading up to it and the wrestler and all the story that you have. Everything gets kneed in the head in 3 seconds and it's over. And that's just, boop, that's it. And then, of course, what he did afterwards, which we'll probably touch on later, it was just, I couldn't not laugh. It was not a reaction I expected to have, because it wasn't because, aha, Ben Askren lost. No, it was just, what? And then the hottest take of all, after I saw that happen, I thought to myself, I think this might be the end of Ben Askren's fighting career. I think this might be it. And so, yeah, it's a pretty hot take. Now, I don't necessarily feel that as much as I did before, but there it is.
That's a scorcher right there. So my hot take I did share earlier, but I'll reiterate. I firmly believe that Jon Jones sets little goals for himself that are strictly to entertain himself, that he decided he was going to win the fight against Thiago Santos and purposely not wrestle, purposely not punch, and he just wanted to throw kicks just to see what happens, just to entertain himself, and that's it. All right, so gentlemen, we're going to move on to the lightning round, and I'll start with you, Jay. So let me make sure the clock is running this time. I'm actually going to enforce the time this one. So Jay, you've got 30 seconds. We're going to talk about Jorge Masvidal's KO over Ben Askren that you were just mentioning. So where would you rank this among the all-time great knockouts in MMA history? And go.
It's right there. It's immediately hot take city, but when the dust settles, it's got to be right there. Henderson Bisping and Silva Belfort, Gonzaga Krokop earlier, Rampage and Arona. It's just right there. It's the ultimate flying knee. I think it's better than Kid Yamamoto's over Miata's. It had huge implications. It was a big payoff, and the celebration just put it over the top. I mean, he made him do a barrel roll, and then he did a barrel roll.
All right. Oh, right on time. Right on time. Okay, Ben, tell me, where do you rank this KO?
I, it's hard. It's hard for me to like overstate things in the heat of the moments. I try to avoid doing that, but it might be number one in terms of how clean the technique was, how sensational it was, how high level the fight was. I mean, Barboza over Edom was not as high level, and it took place in the third round. Uh, Aldo knocking out Swanson, was right off the bat, but it wasn't on as big a stage. I mean, this was incredibly clean technique.
And we're out of time. Oh my goodness, Ben. Ben. Oh, the clock, Ben. The clock. Big Ben
enemy
is a clock. All right. So, yes, I think this ranks of among the all-time great knockouts. I will say this more so because of the technique. I think the moment of Conor knocking out Jose Aldo in 13 seconds, I think that was a bigger moment, but this had better technique. It had the trash talk. It had a lot going on to it. That technique was so sweet. And I am biased because I was there. I was like 20 feet away from it. So definitely adds a little extra flair for me. And I am just under the 30-second mark.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So, Ben, I want you to start this one off here. Can you please tell me, is Uriah Faber's return this weekend after a long layoff just a one-off for him and go?
Probably not, unless he looks completely shot. But he wasn't shot before. He was still capable of competing. There are still guys that he can beat, and he is still probably going to be a sneaky good draw, at least on free TV. So, yeah, barring disaster, I have the feeling he's back for a couple fights.
All right, look at that. Compensating by going grossly under time. I see what you did there, Ben. All right, Jay, you'll go. You tell me, does Uriah Faber make this a one-off, or is this the start of another chapter to his career?
Faber's 40, 2-3 in his last 5, but he only lost to Frankie Edgar, Dominic Cruz, and Jimmy Rivera. Those are great guys. His 2.5-year layoff was a really long time, but he also fought Sakuraba. Yeah, that's Sakuraba in quintet and fought him to a draw. I think this is the perfect comeback fight for him, a now top 15 guy, so I won't screw anything up in the title of the picture. But it's not like he's beating a top 5 guy. But I still think with everything around it, this is a one and done. I think I can still do it. I can still have
end time. Jay violating the clock. All right, so.
No, that was my last word. That was it.
Okay. Oh, yeah. If you had that last word about 0.5 seconds earlier, I was really anxious to cut somebody off too. So, but I was doing on the time. All right. So, start the clock for me. I do believe that this is going to be a one-off for Uriah Faber. I don't favor him to beat Ricky Simone because of the layoff, because how good of a prospect Simone is, and now Faber's life has changed. He's got a kid now. He obviously has businesses. So I think once he gets in there, starts getting dinged up a little bit, be like, it's probably not for me anymore. And I have 5 seconds to spare. So let's go ahead and reset that clock. And Jay, I'm going to start with you this time. 2 fighters on the Sacramento card had their belt stripped, Nico Montoya and, of course, Jermaine Durandamy. Do you believe either one of them can become a champion again and go?
Does anybody really want to see them become champs again? Not a slight against them, but I mean, Durandamy won the belt. She barely beat Holly, but it probably should have been a draw because she should have lost a point. She avoids Cyborg, and they take her belt away. Why would this run be any different? Going to fight Nunes instead, who just knocked out Cyborg. I just don't see a path for her. And as long as Valentina Shevchenko is the champion, Montano has no chance. And if she decides not to cut weight and move up to 135, Nunes is right in there. So no, I don't think so.
There we go. Look at that. Right on the clock there. All right, Ben, tell me, can either of these ladies become champion again in the UFC?
For Jermaine Durandamy, she has a chance. She's still one of the most credentialed female kickboxers ever to do this thing. It really just depends on her own commitment level. So it's possible, but not likely. Montano, no. I mean, she would never have been champ through the normal ladder of contention anyway. She became champ through the Ultimate Fighter and through a blown weight cut, no less. So, no, not for her.
All right. So I'm going to agree with you guys on there. I think GDR has a chance based on her skill set. Montoya, I mean, that means she has to dethrone Shevchenko. It's just not happening. that I don't favor anybody to beat Shevchenko at this point at 125. But I do think Aspen Ladd is facing GDR for a reason. I think the UFC is high on Ladd. I think they see some value in it. I quite frankly don't think that the UFC would trust either one of them with the belt any further. So that alone would exclude them. And I am just at the 30-second mark. Beautiful work by me.
Nice.
Props to me. Salute to Anthony.
Not fair. You get to see the clock.
I know.
Done.
Life isn't fair, Ben. It's okay.
I'm going to put a shot clock right over my webcam right here.
All right, gentlemen. So UFC 239 is officially behind us. International Fight Week was busy. We are not going to be able to catch our breath, though, because Sacramento has a fight night card coming up this weekend, headlined by the aforementioned GDR. She's going to be fighting Aspen Ladd. So tell me about what you think of this main event. Tell me about the card as a whole, at least. Yeah, what's up with this? UFC Sacramento. Ben, I'll start with you.
This is not a great fight night card. This is not one of the good ones. I like the main event. I like Germaine de Randamie versus Aspen Ladd. I think it's a suitable challenge for Ladd. She definitely has ways she can lose this one. It's an interesting style matchup. I mean, Germaine de Randamie is a decorated kickboxer, and in MMA, she is a classic sprawl and brawler. She wants to stay away from you. She wants to keep her hips away. She wants to shuck off your takedown attempts, and she wants to kick you, and then catch you with a punch coming in and bust you up. And she, to this day, I mean, who has she lost to? She's lost to Amanda Nunes, Julia Budd, and Vanessa Porto in her very first fight. And all three of those women are at least top 10 in their respective divisions. Like, I mean, it's not like she has any bad losses. The knock against her is that she said, screw this, like marked being a UFC champion off her bucket list and then went back to be a cop in the Utrecht. That's why we're all mad at her. She's a good fighter. And Aspen Ladd is the opposite of that. Aspen Ladd is a wrestle boxer. She wants to mash you against the fence. She wants to get takedowns, whether against the fence or in open space. And then she wants to get on you like a honey badger and just like beat the shit out of you. Like, when those two styles clash, like something's got to give. If Ladd can beat her, then she's ready for a legit top 7 or 8 opponent. If she doesn't, then we go back to square one, and Germaine has some additional leverage against the UFC for her next fight. So I'm excited about that one. South of that on the card, there's not a whole lot. There are some individual people I'm interested in seeing fight. I'm glad to see Marvin Vettori is back. Quietly, this guy is still the guy that has arguably given Israel Adesanya his hardest fight, including Kelvin Gastelum. I mean, there's not much you can say about that. Marvin Vettori, I didn't score it, but people saying that Adesanya should have lost that fight are not out of their minds. So it's good to see him back. He's going to be back against Cesar Mutanch, which, that's an interesting fight. Other than that, yeah. Individual interesting guys. I always like seeing Ryan Hall fight. Ryan Hall versus Darren Elkins is a weird matchup. Like, it's so weird that when it was announced, I had to remind myself that they're in the same weight division because it's just something I never would have thought of. I'm interested to see how Carl Roberson does going forward. I think he's a really interesting prospect. One of the most interesting guys from last season of the Contender Series. That's about all I have to say about this card. It's pretty dismal.
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty much a lot of it is a showcase for Team Alpha Male, as you would imagine, being in Sacramento, and famously Cody Garbrandt turned down a main event spot on this card for health reasons. So Jay, tell me, what is a fight that stands out to you on this card, other than the main event, of course?
There's a couple that pique my curiosity more than usual. The only thing I have to say about one of them, Josh Hammond versus Mirsad Backtick, is I think it could be a very serious fight of the night contender. I think if these guys both have that same game plan to not fight smart and just kind of brawl, then we can have fireworks there. But on I think it's the early prelims, or it might just be on the prelims, Levine Souza, or Livia Renata Souza to those who are familiar, is fighting Brianna Van Buren for a kind of the de facto not so Invictus strawweight title. They both held it back once upon a time. In fact, Brianna Van Buren just won the first Invicta tournament in May. She won 3 fights in one night to get the strawweight title. And Souza, she knocked out Ayaka Hamasaki a couple years ago, who is our number 1 atomweight fighter. And she likes to top people out. So I think that could be a really good matchup. But the main event it's strange because it's the perfect fight to prepare Ladd for a title shot for one unfortunate reason. De Randamie is the current number 1 ranked bantamweight in the UFC right now, according to the UFC rankings. She's number 1. Nunes is champion, and GDR is number 1. Now, the only reason why this is because Holly Holm is number 2. And de Randamie beat Holly at featherweight, even though weight classes don't translate. That is the only rationale I can have. Now, at bantamweight, de Randamie's beaten Raquel Pennington, Panda Elmos, Larissa Pacheco, and Julie Kedzie. That's it. That's her entire resume to make her the number 1 women's bantamweight fighter in the world in 2019. So if you give Aspen Ladd this opportunity, which it feels like a showcase for her, feels like you can beat a former champion and get you ready for a title shot. That's what this feels like. Then we're going to do it, because you can't put her up against the only other undefeated fighter in the division, Ketlin Vieira, who's 10-0. You can't do that, because then you're knocking out one of the only legit contenders left. Because then you look down the division, it's a round robin. Tanya Evinger beat Yana Kunitskaya, who beat Lena Landsberg, who beat Tanya Evinger, who beat Irene Adana, who beat Lucy Pudilova. So they've all kind of just like circling around, like we have in the women's atomweight division at the Sherdog rankings. We have a bunch of fighters that are all beating each other in the bottom of the rankings because you don't know what to do with them. It's that kind of situation where once you get further down past Ladd, it's tough. So this is a showcase for Ladd.
Yeah, that's kind of my feeling about the main event as well. So the fight that piques my interest, of course, Ryan Hall, Darren Elkins, as you mentioned, Brianna Van Buren, and Livia Souza is another one that piques my interest. But Juliana Pena is coming back. She was last seen being submitted by Valentina Shevchenko on a UFC on Fox card. I believe that was in January of 2017.
Time ago.
Yeah, so she's going to be fighting the also aforementioned strip champion Nico Montoya. So that's something to watch for too. All right, so gentlemen, we're going to conclude today's show with our buried lead of the week. Ben, I'll start with you. What is your story that kind of is not getting the attention that you might think it should?
It might not be fair to call this one buried, since it really just broke within the last 24 hours, but it has been announced that Rizin Fighting Federation and Bellator MMA bantamweight champion Kyoji Horiguchi now has his next fight set, and it is a non-title fight.
Wait, what? I haven't seen it, so I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah, that just went live like right before we went on.
He's fighting Kai Asakura.
Okay, good fight.
7-1
Yeah.
in a non-title bantamweight fight, because what could be more Japanese than having your champion fight without putting his belt on the line? Anyway, I mean, I kind of talked about this a month or two ago when he beat Caldwell, that this is going to cause immediate problems for both of the promotions he's in, especially whichever promotion is his second priority, you know, his fallback girl.
Bellator. And now, I mean, there's the possibility, what if he gets cut real bad? What if he breaks his orbital or his little pinky finger? There's a possibility that the number 2 and arguably number 3 promotions in the world are going to have their bantamweight titles on hold through the end of 2019. Like, I'm sad that Rizin is doing this. Scott Coker, even though he is the picture of professionalism and conviviality on the mic, has to be pinching the bridge of his nose right now. And if this were the UFC, there would be an interim bantamweight title fight in 2 weeks. So that's my buried lead of the week. That in the wake of his history-making moment, Kyoji Horiguchi is about to defend neither of his titles in August.
All right, Jay, so you tell me, what is your buried lead of the week?
Well, first of all, I do think if they did that for Bellator, they'd throw Joe Warren a title shot, because he gets just about all of them. So to have Joe Warren fight for the interim bantamweight title. Anyway,
so he's the Uriah Faber of Bellator, basically?
Yeah. I mean, he deserved it. He was the featherweight and bantamweight champion, but that was a long time ago. This was I kind of had a flip of the coin. So I'll kind of do 1.5. I'll do like a sentence on the second one. The big one, I think, is the Nevada Green Lights one-night tournaments, which, according to PFL, I haven't done all the research, says that this will be the first one-night tournament that Vegas has ever had for pro MMA. I don't know if I believe that, but I don't have the numbers to find out if it's not true. But that's really interesting to me that Vegas was against one-night tournaments for so long until the PFL came to town. They're coming to Mandalay Bay, so it isn't exactly they're not going to the T-Mobile Arena or anything, but they're having 3 events, all 3 in the Mandalay Bay, for the first round of their playoffs. And that's really interesting to me that if that's true, that's a big deal. So I don't know what everybody took so long. And the one sentence other lead that is kind of funny is that Golden Boy MMA is now officially dead and buried.
What?
It's gone.
Really?
Aren't you surprised?
I thought they were like the new powerhouse. They were going to pay the fighters right and everything.
Well, that Darren
Lies
Wynn
you speak, Jay.
No, the Darren Wynn guy was looking really good. I was excited to see his next fight. Oh wait, I already saw his next fight.
Yeah, the one good thing to come from that debacle. All right, so my buried lead of the week is, and maybe this isn't much of a headline anymore, but surprise, surprise, Gegard Mousasi loses a fight, and he accuses his opponent of being on steroids. But the fun part about this to me is the way that Mousasi tells this story, that he apparently raised some issue with a commission official who pretty much just said, and I want to make sure I quote this correctly. I told the commission that it's clear that he was on PEDs. The commissioner gave me a pat on the shoulder and told me that he was going to get tested on fight day and walked away.
I love my opponents.
Yeah. So
are on steroids.
So not a shocker that he's accusing someone who beat him of being on steroids, but also that this actually became an issue. That he says that Scott Coker ghosted him on the texting as a result. That's the funniest part about this to me, that Scott Coker ghosted him. So that, gentlemen, will conclude Off the Chain for the week. Unless, Ben, looks like you've got something you want to add to this.
You know what? The day that USADA adds salt to the list of banned substances, Mousasi is done.
Watch out for Rockhold, though.
No, the thing is, if that grain of if you cut that grain of salt into 50 million pieces on a table,
Mousasi's got all of them. He's the saltiest man in the world.
Yeah, you got to throw that little bit of salt into an Olympic-sized swimming pool, and there you go. All right, gentlemen. So that's going to conclude Off the Chain for the week. Ben, please tell the good folks that are watching and listening where they can find you.
You can find me at Sherdog.com. I write a lot of columns. In fact, I wrote one about UFC 239 called Minute by Minute. It's just honestly some jokes and one-liners and personal observations. But as I've alluded to, I watched it in a pretty hilarious bar. So if you want to check that out on the front page of Sherdog, I hope you'll find something to laugh at, because it was pretty damn real.
All right. And Jay, where can the good folks find you?
Well, you can also find me on Sherdog.com on the features page. You can just drop down and you'll find all 3 of our names, actually. Most recently, I wrote a fight fact statistics piece going into UFC 239 to find the fun facts and interesting information of all the craziness that happened. I won't have one for the Tuesday Night Contender Series. I'm going to wait till the mid-season finale in a week or two, but I'll have one up on PFL. I'll have one up on UFC Sacramento. I'll have one up on Bellator. It's Ruben versus Bud. Yes, that's the Bellator card that we don't know enough about. So I'll have all those coming up pretty much as they come out on next week.
All right, cool. So you guys can find me on Twitter at AntWalkerMMA. Also on the features drop-down menu, my author page is there. Also did a lot of work over the last week. So a lot of stuff, interview with KSW co-founder Martin Lewandowski that I did live in Vegas. Did an appearance on a couple of MMA fighting shows as well. So go ahead, check those out. Had our Sherdog post-fight wrap-up joined by Kristen King of Fansided MMA. So all over the place, collaborating with the fellow media members out there in the world. And, of course, you can also find some of my work on MMA On Point, the YouTube channel. So that will do it this week. So you know what you got to do. You must stay beautiful. You must stay positive. You must not accuse anyone of beating you, of being on steroids. And through it all, dodge those flying knees and stay sexy. I will see you when I see you. Peace.